Blog Talk Radio.
Franchise interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews. Welcome to Franchise Interviews, an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship. Listen to interviews with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys. And now, welcome your host, Marty McDermott, and Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 17 years now, we've been asking the Franchipreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and we have a great show. We're meeting with Chris Walls, the president and CEO of Go Minis. And Go Minis is an innovative portable storage company offering a unique approach to the industry, using territories instead of physical locations, significantly reducing overhead costs. This flexible model not only benefits franchisees, but also allows them to serve customers more efficiently and effectively. And we're going to talk to Chris about that in just a moment on Franchise Interviews. So stick around because we have a great show.
Franchise Teacher.
Would you like to know how to franchise your concept or grow your franchise business?
Meet the experts at Franchise Teacher.
The goal of Franchise Teacher is to teach, coach, consult, and advise. The team of experts at Franchise Teacher will evaluate your business model and present you with a winning business strategy.
Franchise Teacher will help you decide whether or not your concept works and if it's franchisable. Franchise Teacher is proud to have over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors.
Franchise Teacher are developers of over a dozen franchise systems, which include brick and mortar as well as home-based concepts of nearly 3,000 combined franchise locations.
Whether you need to add more units or get more customers, Franchise Teacher can help. We will teach.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn our proven system.
Coach.
Franchise Teacher will help you provide a game plan to succeed.
Consult.
Franchise Teacher will make sure you stay on track.
And advise.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn from our over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors. Take advantage of our free, no-obligation phone consultation. Simply go to franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-3032.
That's franchiseteacher.com. Or call us at 561-385-3032.
Hi, this is Connie McDermott, Administrative Assistant for Franchise Interviews, and you are listening to Franchise Interviews.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 17 years now, we've been asking the Franchipreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and as we were saying earlier, we have a great show. We're meeting with Chris Walls, the president and CEO of Go Minis. And Go Minis is an innovative portable storage company offering a unique approach to the industry using territories instead of physical locations, significantly reducing overhead costs. Hi, Chris. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Marty. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Chris. Thank you for coming on the show today. We always like to ask our guests, where are you calling from today, Chris?
I work from my home in beautiful Connecticut. Not too far outside of New York City. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Not too far from you in Easton, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. I was going to say, it's a nice time of year to be in Connecticut, isn't it, Chris?
It's awesome. I was just away and came back, and I was gone for a week, and it's amazing what the colors have done in the fall. Love it here.
All right. Yeah, it is. It's amazing. You know, I was on your LinkedIn page this week, Chris, and I said, oh my God, I said, what an impressive background. You know, because it's a little bit different than like the traditional approach to coming into franchising. I thought, you know, maybe we could start with you know, your background and then how you came to Go Minis, you know, as the CEO of the company. Because your background, it sounded like it was like in litigation, wasn't it?
Well, it was early. When I'm an attorney by training, and I was a litigator for about 8 years. I did medical malpractice defense and a few other things, and enjoyed that very much. And then I had a good friend who's an entrepreneur, also an attorney, and he was starting a company, and he asked if I would come help him, and I started down kind of the corporate counsel path. And then as I get into corporate counsel roles, as you're in business, you realize, like, well, a lot of people bring the lawyer legal problems, and they're really business problems, not legal problems. So I start solving the quote-unquote legal problems with business solutions. And then it's like, well, and I would morph into operational roles. And I did that, and then I became the CEO of a small public company that was private equity backed. And went from there. And so I usually bounce back and forth between kind of a general counsel role in corporate America and then some operational role or CEO role. And, I was familiar with Go Minis as a friend of mine purchased a dealership early on with Go Minis. Right. And I thought the concept was great. And I looked at it. I learned a little bit about the business a long time ago. I went off and did a number of other things. And they were just at an inflection point. They were looking for someone to, the current CEO was looking to do some other things. And they were looking to take the company in a new direction in kind of their second or third phase of the growth. And it worked for me from a timing perspective. And like I said, I was always enamored with the model. It's a simple model, and I love it. And so I said, this would be great. And that's how I ended up here about 5 years ago.
That's wonderful. It's a great story, Chris. And, what's interesting with Go Minis, I didn't even realize, because I'm definitely familiar. I've been familiar with the brand name for quite some time now, but I think you're coming up on is it like the 25-year anniversary mark or somewhere around there?
We started in 2002 as a dealership model. Okay. And for Bill and Sheila Norris were the founders out of Jacksonville, Florida. And they went out and they sold dealership models, and basically was just said, hey, we'll give you a protected territory. We'll provide the containers for you and some support, but not a ton. And what ended up happening is a lot of the dealers who were really invested and really thought this was a great concept realized they were all repeating the same task. And boy, would there be a way for people to get together and kind of, maybe have some economies of scale? And they actually formed a franchise in 2012. And we converted a lot of the dealers, and then we started selling franchises as you would any other new franchise, starting out with a friend person and that sort of thing. But the core of our franchising, the franchisor is actually owned by a number of the franchisees, which is a little different than you'd see. And that's the core group that really got it started in 2012. So, we're coming up on, we've been around for a bit. So we learned a little bit about it.
That's what, it's right. Everything's a learning experience, Chris. And I like how you mentioned like the simplicity of the model. You said that's what attracted you to it. And I think that's what makes really, I guess, the best franchises, right, is the simplicity of the model.
Exactly. And, we call them, the containers minis. And, it's a mini and you put your things in it. And you would think that, there are so many uses, and our franchisees and our customers come up and like, oh, I never thought about doing that. Oh, wow. And, a farmer comes up, hey, can I put hay in it in the winter in the middle of the pasture to keep it dry? And then you have, very large retailers. Hey, we're getting all of our Christmas goods in or holiday goods in early. Can we put them in the back and store them? It's amazing to me how many different uses that people find for our minis. And, but at the end of the day, it's a mini. You put your stuff in it, we can deliver it to you, or we can store it for you. We can leave it on your property, and it saves, if you've ever had to move out of someplace and the timing didn't match up, or use a mini storage where you have to load it, unload it, load it, unload it. We solve all that. So it really does solve a problem too. So it's a simple solution that, we spend a fair amount of time kind of educating our consumers, like, well, how does this work? And you would think, the industry's been around for, 30 years, and you would think that everyone knows, but we spend a lot of time saying, oh, well, this is it. And like, oh, wow, that's really convenient. So and you can move it across town. You can move it across the country now with our new program, Go Minis Miles, that we just started. So, and people feel that, well, I can load my mini and I have total control over it. I can take my time. I put my lock on it and then ship it across the country. Nobody else is touching my things. And then you're going to drop it off in my driveway at my new place, and I'm going to take my time and unload it again. Yes. I don't have to do it all in a day. I don't have to do, I can do it over time and take my time and get everything set up the way I want. Really, really convenient. And it, like I said, it's solving a problem that and making things so much easier for folks who use our services.
I agree with you, Chris. And this interview was so timely because my mom just recently moved. She's 80 years old, and she moved, closer to where my sister is, and so we had to, of course, help her, and so we did it the traditional way. We got a moving truck, and so we put everything in boxes and went in the garage, and then then when the movers came, everything was rushed and it was thrown into the truck, and then they went to her house and they threw everything in the garage, and I just said, oh my God, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so when I was exploring the GoMinis model, I said, why didn't we think of this? As you said, it solves a problem, doesn't it?
It really does. And, it's such a stressful time when you're moving. Yeah. And to just be able to say, hey, I can take, and it's not going to cost you a lot, or sometimes it'll be much cheaper than a full service move. But to keep that container on your property for a month, say, before you move and start loading it. Hey, I have a couple hours after work today. Oh, I'm going to spend Saturday doing this, but Sunday I'm going to go do something else because I can do it next week. It really is. It takes a lot of the stress out of the situation.
It's funny as you were describing it, Chris, too, because I kind of thought of like you're familiar with the Arm & Hammer baking soda. When it came out, it was baking soda, and then all of a sudden, it was used for all these other different things. It seemed like that's what happened with GoMinis, as you said, as you're describing the story, is people saying, "Can I use it for this?" or "Can I use it for that?" It's so many multiple uses for the product, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the things where we say it's a simple business, and a lot of times our customers are bringing the ideas to us. I'm like, oh yeah, and that's like we use it right now. A lot of folks are using very big to get your garage redone and get the epoxy and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And we partnered with a lot of contractors who do that work, and they actually include the GoMini now in their services when they give them a quote, because the biggest question they have to answer for, like, what am I going to do with all my stuff in the garage? So, we're going to bring a GoMini container. We're going to put it right outside your driveway. You can load everything in there. It can stay there for as long as you want, and then you can take your time and unload it. And it's just every day, actually, I hear some new and innovative piece. So.
That's fantastic. That's great, Chris. And, it was interesting because, again, you know so much more about this business than I do, but it sounded like, I was looking at, like, the different sizes of the containers. It sounded like the 20-foot is kind of like a unique selling proposition. I don't know all the different sizes of these minis, but that seems to be something a little bit different. On the website, it says up to 20-foot containers.
That's correct. That's actually one of our differentiators. Our competitors we all have unique delivery systems, and they designed their delivery systems for their largest containers of 16 foot. And one of the biggest questions, another question we get is like, well, what size do I need? And you give them estimates, but it really depends on how you pack it. Right? And if you're a skilled packer and you've done this for a living, you can probably go, oh, yeah, I'm going to fit it in a 12 or I'm going to fit it in a 16. Right. But most people aren't like that, right? Where they're casual movers, or they do this once every 5 years or whatever it may be. So having the 20-foot, which, isn't a lot of times is about the same price as our competitor's 16-foot, and you don't have to worry as much as like, okay, I'm not going to need another container. I don't have to have double the cost. I'm going to be able to fit everything in a 20. And our delivery system is such that our containers are on wheels, and we can get it into a lot of places that our competitors can't as well, because they have a large delivery system that requires a lot of room on both sides of the container. And for us, it's just about the same width as the container. We can drop it wherever it needs to be. So
that's wonderful. Yeah, and it's it's so important to have a unique selling proposition, as you know, Chris. In the introduction, we mentioned that GoMinis, you're using territories instead of physical locations, significantly reducing overhead cost. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that to our listeners.
Sure,
that's important.
Sure. So our containers are weather tight, and we're probably on generation 8 now of containers as we continue to improve them. And we don't require our franchisees to have a in-house warehouse storage. It's done basically. You can find a lot with that is paved or it may have concrete on it, and it can be out. It doesn't have to be in the middle of the location so your folks can drive to, because we're bringing it to them. So it can be in a place where it's much less expensive. And then our territories, we found our sweet spot for territories is about 800,000 to 1 million to people, depending on the population density. Okay. So you can service that group, and maybe it's the high rent district. And for you to have to find, a real estate in the middle of that, that could really make or break your business. So if you're able to say, you know what, I could be on the fringe of this territory where my real estate costs are half, and then I can service that by bringing everything into them, it makes a big difference in the profitability of your business. And so we're very proud of that fact, and it works very well for us.
Wow, that's wonderful. I imagine, technology, plays a role in the business. It's probably changed from, the way GoMinis did things, 25 years ago, Chris, to where you are today. But, how does GoMinis use technology for the franchise system?
It's a constant battle to keep up with that, right? So our most recent foray, we did a proprietary operating system we call GM1.
Okay.
And that's been around now for 3 years. And we needed more control. We were using a third-party vendor. We needed more control so that we could start doing add-ons and developing functionality and do it ourselves as we realize what our franchisees need, what the market is demanding. And so GM1 will basically enable a customer to go onto our website, get a quote, and walk through the entire process with, giving their credit cards, buying ancillary items if they need locks, if they need boxes and that sort of thing, insurance. And they can walk through the whole thing. They can sign their contract electronically, and our franchisee doesn't even have to have contact with them until it's time for delivery and that sort of thing. And the whole process could be seamless for the customer, and that's something we've designed. And we're also helping our franchisees. We just recently designed an email marketing tool that when folks come by and maybe they get a quote and they don't book right away, that we'll reach out to them with an email. It's like, hey, can we answer any questions? Hey, we're having a special. Did you know that? That sort of thing. So we're supporting from that. And that's all possible through GM1, which we developed internally and rolled out about 2 years ago now, and have made significant improvements and continue to do so. So that's the biggest piece. And then, like anybody else, we're really trying to figure out, AI and ChatGPT and that sort of thing. We encourage our franchisees to use that to help us with your marketing and that sort of thing. But that's not as formalized, to be honest with you. But I suspect, quite frankly, in 25 and beyond, we're going to start using those processes and putting them into kind of our operations manual and that sort of thing, because they just save so much time. I use ChatGPT often, and I encourage my team to use it, and I encourage our franchisees to use it as well.
Yeah, I think that's great, Chris, because I've heard that, I think there was a couple interviews we did where, the franchisors are starting to explore I love ChatGPT too, and uploading, I guess, the operations manual, and then your franchisees at any time of the day can kind of like type in a question or a query, and you get a response. It's ChatGPT is amazing, isn't it?
It really is. It really is.
Yeah.
And we have, we make all of our goods available electronically as well. We have an intranet, and we have a pricing tool so our franchisees can log in and see what our competitors are charging. We try and we continue to upgrade that every time. We say, oh, here's a great training module.
Right.
Put that on the internet so they have that. Hey, I have a new employee. We'll just send them over the intranet. Everything they need to learn is there.
That's wonderful. Here's an interesting question for you, Chris. And I think you kind of mentioned some of them as I asked you these questions. But what's been one of the most interesting things that's happened to you since being part of GoMinis?
Wow, that's a very, very interesting question. There's been so much. When I came in, we made a lot of changes, and we just did our third satisfaction survey, and our numbers continue to increase. So hopefully that's indicative of the changes. But what I didn't realize, because I was relatively new to franchising 5 years ago, I didn't realize it's a little bit of a who moved my cheese. Franchisees, change is sometimes difficult, and there's an initial resistance, and I kind of scratched my head a little bit, like, why would that be? And then I realized, and I've come to understand it. And so we now, if we have change, we roll it out differently, and we try and make sure people really, really understand why we're doing it, and what the benefits are for you, and then slowly but surely, what ends up happening is, we get initial pushback, and then people say, hey, this is pretty good. This is great. Great. So that kind of surprised me the most, I guess.
Yeah. That's great.
And I didn't, because I honestly, if you look at my career, which you mentioned earlier, I love change. And I've been in healthcare, I've been in software, I've been in manufacturing, I've built rock and roll stages for periods.
Wow.
So, just a lot of different things. And for me, it's like, well, that's interesting. Let's figure that business out. And let's get involved in that. So that's probably the most interesting, probably because from a personal level, how I approach it. And then you realize, like, okay, you've got a system. And when you change that system, it affects so many people. In fact, we have 106 sold franchises across the country. And so it's affecting so many people. So we do a better, a more thoughtful job of rolling that out. So that was probably the most surprising thing.
That's great, Chris. And, I was reading an interview you did a while back, and just like the whole philosophy of Go Minis, which comes from your leadership. But, is even the way you think of is you don't think of like vendors. You think of vendors more as like partners or relationships, don't you?
I really do, because I think in this day and age you have to, and you're not just someone that's providing it. We need support from you down the road as our franchisees need support. So if you're going to come into our orbit and we're going to do business with you, when we have a problem, please get on board with me to solve. It's not me solving the problem for the franchisees; it's us. It's a group.
Right.
It's like, okay, what's the solution? And then like our container manufacturers, when something comes up and we say, hey, this is an issue, comes back, hey, we've gone back to our factory and we're making that change now. And that's what we want to see, because for us, it's like, look, nothing is perfect, but you always want to continue to improve. And so when we look at our vendors, they are very supportive. We just had our regional conference in Indianapolis, and our vendors are there acting as partners, and supporting us. And, they're actually in our meeting, sitting at the table and contributing and saying, well, what we've seen, hey, this is, and sometimes, this is what's worked for some of the franchisees that we've seen do this. So they're bringing and adding value, and that's what it's all about. Because I think the franchisor and its partners, they need to be adding value every day to the franchisee community or network that we have. And that's the biggest thing we've really tried to do. From when I took over, it's what can we deliver every day to our franchisees to make it easier for them to grow their business. And I think that's really our role. So, and that's what has to happen with our vendor partners.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, Chris, because that's a benefit of franchising too. Is that your franchisees? I mean, they're part of these instantaneous. They're instantaneous relationships for them. You know what I mean? But you've built them over time. You know what I mean? Because I'm thinking about this to take your type of business and go at it alone. It just seems like an impossible task. You know what I mean? To just start, say, okay, I'm going to do this on my own. To me, it just seems almost impossible. It's like, where do you begin? So there's so many benefits to franchising. And, and speaking of franchising, Chris, so, when you're thinking of, taking on a new franchisee, are there any types of like characteristics or traits that you feel are important that they would be a successful Go Mini franchisee?
There are several, and we look at it as this is a long-term relationship. This is like a marriage. We need to make sure that we're the right fit for you. You're the right fit for us, and for us, we look for folks that have that entrepreneurial drive, obviously, and that really understand that, while we're a system and you're going to be in business for yourself, but not by yourself, but that means, there are obligations on you. The franchise system can't do everything for you. They can put all the tools out there, but you need to use them. So we look for someone who's got that entrepreneurial spirit that understands that and will use the tools that are presented in front of them. We can't have, we've had some people in the systems that, well, I'm going to do it my way. I'm like, well, no. Yeah. We've already, we have this system for a reason, and we didn't just make these things up. They're actually, a result of trial and error. And that's the whole reason you join a franchise, is that we've made the mistakes already and fixed them, so you don't have to. So that, and then we look for actually a degree of patience as well, because this is a great business, but it's a longer term business. We think you can get, depending on your market, that you can get to break even in about 18 months to 24 months, and which is not terribly long. But you've invested a lot of money. The minis are not inexpensive. Our truck is not inexpensive. So you're going to get a return on your investment, but it's going to take some time. And sometimes if the market is we depend on the residential real estate market for a lot of our business, which has not been great the last couple of years. So you have to find other ways to do things, and it may take your build a little bit longer. So you just need to be patient, and you need to have to understand. It's like, okay, it may take me a little longer to get where I am. But if you look at our franchisees that have been in the system for a long time, they do very, very well, particularly as they, pay off their containers and that sort of thing. It's really, really, really a nice business. And I tried to put my son into one, but he wasn't interested in moving out of New York City. I believe in it that much.
Yeah,
so when we look for franchisees, we want people that really understand, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to have my own business, but I really need to listen to the guy standing behind me in the franchisor because they've done this before and follow along with what their program is. Now, that being said, we also look for people that are innovative that can come back and say, hey, have you thought about this? I was like, if we did and it didn't work out, or, well, we can revisit that, or, wow, that's a great idea. Let's make that, let's put that in network system-wide for us, that sort of thing. So it's a balance. But I think that the key thing is someone that says, okay, I get it, and I'm on board with the system, and I like it, and this makes sense for me, that sort of thing.
Wow. This is powerful, Chris, because it's interesting. I've been doing the show 17 years now, and I never heard that, but it's so powerful to me, as you said it, is patience, right? Because that first year or year and a half or 2 years, I think sometimes people come in with the expectations that, okay, I'm it's just, I'm going to make $1 million the first year, and so that patience quality, as I say, patience is a virtue, isn't it? And I think that's so important, isn't it? It's just very powerful to me, as you said that.
It is, and it's very easy. The thing about our system is it's very easy to grow. Many times if you buy a franchise and let's say there's a brick and mortar or a fast food idea, you're kind of limited to that store, and maybe and it goes well. Oh, I'll go buy another one, and then you got to go through that whole process. With us, you're unlimited. It's like your initial container buy, maybe it's 100 minis, and then you're doing so well. It's like, well, let me order another 100, and then you're renting those up. Let me order another 100. And you're limited. I mean, you can probably put. We like to have an acre of land, and you can probably put about 300 containers in that acre. You stack them a little bit, but you can just your growth is almost unlimited with us. And it's not that you have to go out and start over again. You've already built this basis, and you just keep adding, and you just keep adding, and keep adding. And that's what our most successful franchisees have done. And in fact, a lot of my sales in the last 2 years have been to our existing franchisees.
Wow.
If a new territory comes up, they're like, oh, I'm interested in that.
Yep. That's a great sign, Chris. When you see that happening, it's very powerful. I'm thinking of has the training changed a lot? I've noticed some of the training and the franchisors have changed, since COVID, Chris. I mean, are you doing more online today, or is it still? How does it work? Do they come to corporate headquarters for that?
Well, we're actually 100% remote right now. And,
okay, good. Okay, a lot of them are, yeah.
And so what we end up doing is we actually go to them. So we have training online through our internet. Our GM1 system over Zoom. You can actually go to their location in Ohio if you'd like to sit down and walk through them. But then we have our operations team that will sit down with you and when you open up and come out and say, okay, make sure you're getting set up properly. This is what you do. This is how you handle this. This is what you do. We also send them to our best franchisees so they can see how they operate. And then our operations team kind of comes back and says, okay, that's great. Here's what you should do, that sort of thing. But what's really interesting is what has changed is the content of our training in the last couple of years, because our market in the last 2 years, our market has changed dramatically. And our focus on which customers to go after, we've always had a good commercial business or B2B business, but right now, that should be the focus. And 3 years ago, the focus was on individuals and residential real estate, which is phenomenal. We had phenomenal growth. And COVID was actually, besides the shipping crisis, was very good for our underlying business. And now we've gone out into the marketplace and into what we call national partnerships with restoration companies, with folks that that need our minis any time of the year, as opposed to kind of the seasonal rush for moving and that sort of thing. And we've established these relationships, and we've opened the door for our franchisees, and the training is based on that. It's like, well, how do we get more of those folks? So why we have that, and our operations team will actually come to your location and go out with you for a day or two. Say, this is what you do. Here's the collateral we have that's available on our internet that is designed for this specific company that we have a partnership with. And by the way, there's 10 of those offices in your territory. Let's go visit all 10 of them, introduce yourself and that sort of thing. So the training, the content has changed a little bit and our focus has changed a little bit. Our delivery mechanisms, they're very similar to what they used to be.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned, Chris, when you came into franchising, you were new at it, but you've been doing this now, for quite some time. So you have a lot of experience in franchising. One of the questions we like to ask someone like yourself is, what advice would you give to our listeners in their quest to buy a franchise? Because a lot of people, there's so much out there today. I think they said there's something like 4,000 different systems today. So when someone starts saying, okay, I want to get involved in franchising, it's like, okay, well, where do I even begin? I mean, from everything that you've learned up to this point, what advice would you give to our listeners then in their quest to buy a franchise?
Having been on both sides, because I looked at franchising, we looked to buy some franchises in 2006. And I would, the biggest thing is actually starts with you. It starts with the franchisee. What's your take a personal inventory? What do I like?
Yeah.
Is there something? Is there some area that I really like? Is it something that's important to me? Like, hey, I want a service business. All right.
Right.
And then you start looking there. So I think it's a personal inventory along those lines. And then the next biggest step is get that FDD and read it from cover to cover, as painful as that might be. But read it. Read it from cover to cover and really understand what it is, the system you're getting into. And then the second piece is talk to as many franchisees in the system as you can. Are they happy? No, look, franchising is an interesting business, and just like anything else, there are people that are extremely happy, there are people that are extremely unhappy, and you have to figure out, well, why are they unhappy? Why are they successful and so happy? And where do I fit in that mix, again, with that personal inventory? And when you do that, because, look, the franchisee, the prospective franchisee and the franchisor, they don't want a failed relationship. Neither one. They want every franchisee to be successful.
That's
and it's not good for anybody. So the more homework and due diligence that franchisee does, it's all there. All the information is there. And you really make an informed decision as to what works for you. And because there are so many choices,
Right. Yeah, that is. I think that's great advice, Chris. So, as the president and CEO, I could ask you the last question, Chris, is, I mean, if you could look into a crystal ball, whether the crystal ball is 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years, I mean, where do you see Go Minis down the road?
We're going to continue our growth. We're going to add more franchisees to the network. And we're really looking for ways we can develop new products and new services that our franchisees can offer. For example, we just did a relaunch of our what we call Go Minis Miles, which is our long distance program. And we're really going to concentrate in 25 on how do we expand that out. Right now we're doing it in kind of some narrow lanes, say Florida to New York, or, Chicago to LA. We have very narrow lanes that we're doing it in. We're trying to expand that out so we can cover our entire network. And we do think that's going to be a driver of our growth. And then we're going to continue our partnership program. We're talking with, we've added 6 or 7 national partners in 24. We have another 6 or 7 that we're talking with to try and bring them into the fold. And we're really looking for ways that we can make it easier for our franchisees to grow their business and really give them instruction as to, hey, this is the path you need to follow. So I think, by adding new franchises, adding some services, particularly our Go Minis Miles program, I think that'll really help continue our growth trajectory. So that's what we're really trying to do.
It's nice branding and advertising too, Chris, right? When you're going across the country and then you see the Go Minis logo, right? I mean, there's a lot of advertising, isn't it?
There really is. I see our competitors all the time, all over the country.
Unfortunately, right? Yeah, but I think that's great, Chris. What's the best way, Chris, for our listeners to get more information on Go Minis? Of course, there's the franchise opportunity, but even like the service itself, are there any websites you can kind of direct our listeners to?
Sure. If you GoMinis.com is our main website, and you can type in, if you're looking for local service, type in your zip code, and it'll take you right to a landing page for that local franchisee. And if you're interested in franchising, we have GoMinisFranchising.com, and we have a system in there where you can log in and start to get information and walk through that process as well.
That's fantastic. Well, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed talking to you, Chris. I've done so many of these interviews over the years. I think we're on our 900th podcast, and I've done so many of these interviews, and I really love your model. I think it's very impressive, as a franchise opportunity, So I'd love to have you back in another year or two as you continue to grow, because I really enjoyed this interview.
I enjoyed it as well, and happy to come back. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
This has been my pleasure, Chris. And we'll be right back with more franchise interviews. Coming up in our next segment, we'll be playing a clip from our Great Quotes in Franchising podcast right here on Franchise Interviews.
Franchise Interviews, an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship.
Through our website, franchiseinterviews.com, where you can hear and read interviews as well as get tips from some of the most successful sources in franchising.
And our weekly franchise radio show, where each week you get to hear a new interview with franchisors, franchisees, franchise authors, experts, and attorneys. And don't forget to listen to our podcast, Great Quotes in Franchising. For more information, go to franchiseinterviews.com or call us at 610-905-2919.
That's 610-905-2919.
Hi, everyone. This is Marty McDermott, the president of Franchise Interviews, and welcome to another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising, where each podcast you get to hear a great quote in franchising. Well, one of the shows I strongly recommend listening to if you're an aspiring entrepreneur is Stop Riding the Pine. And the show is hosted by Jamie J. And Jamie is an amazing interviewer. He speaks with entrepreneurs on a variety of topics. And I had the pleasure of appearing on Stop Riding the Pine. And one of the topics that Jamie and I were focusing on were key elements to successful franchising. So this particular clip of Great Quote in Franchising, we're going to call this There's No Creativity in Franchising, and we're going to explain why. What do I want this franchise to do for me? Why are you considering getting into franchising? Because, a lot of times people that get into franchising, Jamie, I think probably should not get into franchising. They'll go into it for the wrong reasons. Well, they'll see the success of one franchise and they'll say, God, I wish I owned one of these. But that doesn't mean that they should necessarily buy into a Dunkin' Donuts franchise. And sometimes they go into the wrong franchise opportunity. So they might be suited for a franchise, but they're getting into the wrong franchise, So I think you really have to be open, to all the different categories that are out there. Again, going deep within yourself and asking yourself, what do I want this franchise to do for me? If you don't want to work on weekends, then don't get into one of these like children franchises where they're real busy on Saturdays or Sundays. So you have to say, what do I want it to do for me? And you ask yourself those deep-rooted questions.
Perfect. I think that's huge. It's very important for people to not jump into something.
Absolutely, because it's expensive too, Jamie. I mean, a lot of times, you're signing a 10-year contract, which is 10 years of your life. It's a long time, isn't it? I mean, it's
oh my gosh.
Like, I won't compare it to the sanctity of marriage, but
right.
sometimes it goes further than that, I mean, having that 10-year commitment, so it is a very big commitment. Financially, it's a big commitment. I think you have to have the support from your family, whether it's your wife and your children, because the first year, typically, from what I've learned in doing this show such a long time now, is it takes a long time to get it off the ground. Even if it is a Subway franchise or a very recognizable brand name, you're still going to be putting a lot of work into it. So
right.
You might be missing that time from your family. And sometimes people get into franchising for the wrong reasons as well. Maybe they'll have a bad day at work, and they say, "Oh, I hate my boss."
I'm out of here.
I want to be my own boss. And again, franchising may not be the best alternative for that type of person. There's so many different types of levels of entrepreneurship. Franchising is just one. I mean, you could just initially start your own business where you get to be the creator. There's no in franchising sometimes, I mean, you have to follow somebody else's creation, and that's okay for some people. For me, it wouldn't be. And I assume in getting to know you over time, you might have trouble with that as well, because again, you like to create.
I couldn't get outside of the structure, but I understand why that would be a good thing, because
exactly
they've been there, they've done that. You won't make the same mistakes that the original franchisor made, because they found the solutions along the way, and that's part of the attraction for franchise.
Exactly. I published
Yeah, it sounds like I'm bragging, Jamie, but I just got one of a paper published in.
You deserve it.
If you'd like to hear that whole interview with Jamie J of Stop Riding the Pine, all you have to do is go to stopridingthepine.com, and you can hear the whole podcast. And lastly, we just want to thank everyone for making this podcast such a big success. It's hard to imagine that we've been doing it now 10 years ago. It was one of the things I was talking about with Jamie on the show, is the longevity of the show. Is, what started out to be a 1-month project turned out to be 10 years. So I just want to thank everyone for listening to the podcast and making it such a success. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you again soon with another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising from Franchise Interviews. Take care, everyone.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.